Bailey was not the kind of dog who wandered. She was an Australian shepherd, steady-eyed, soft-footed, and utterly devoted to the small kingdom of her back porch. She had just given birth to 5 puppies, and her world had contracted to the size of their warmth. The nest of old blankets, the creak of the screen door, the hum of the woods beyond the yard. She did not stray. She did not need to. Everything she loved was right here. So when she vanished one autumn afternoon, slipping into the tree lane without a sound, her family knew something was wrong. Hours passed. The puppies whimpered in their pen, nosing the air for a scent that wasn't coming. The family called her name until their voices thinned against the dusk. They searched the edges of the property with flashlights, hearts knotting tighter with every unanswered call. A predator, a trap, a fall. The possibilities were all sharp and none of them kind. Then, just as the last band of light bled from the sky, a rustle at the edge of the woods. Bailey emerged from the shadows, filthy and deliberate. Her coat was matted with dirt, her breathing heavy. But she was not alone. Cradled gently in her jaws, barely the size of a man's hand, was a small spotted creature. Limp, silent, still breathing. At first, they thought it was a kitten. Then they saw the tufted ears, the oversized paws, the wild, half-closed eyes. It was a bobcat cub, starving, frozen, alive, but only just. Bailey set him down on the porch with the tenderness of a surgeon and looked up at her family, as if to say, "I found him. Now help me save him." No one moved at first. The cub lay on the wooden boards like a thing already half surrendered to the earth, his breath shallow and irregular, his body trembling with a cold that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than the weather. Then instinct kicked in, not the wild kind, but the human kind. The kind that makes you kneel beside something broken and whisper, "Hold on." A blanket appeared, a shallow box lined with towels, a dropper of sugar water, held to cracked lips. The cub licked once, weakly, then again. Behind the glass door, the puppies cried for their mother. Inside, Bailey nuzzled each one, tail low but wagging, a quiet promise. "I'm here. You're safe." Then she padded back to the porch and lay beside the box, pressing her body against the floor as though warmth were something she could will through wood and cloth. The family barely slept. They tucked warm water bottles around his small body and whispered encouragements into the dark, as if the sound of a human voice might be enough to tether him to the living. Bailey didn't leave his side. She guarded him the way she guarded her own, with a vigilance that needed no instruction. By morning, his eyes opened, glassy, unfocused, but unmistakably alive. They named him Aspen. In the days that followed, Aspen did what no one expected. He stayed. He didn't claw. He didn't hiss. He moved through the rooms of the house like a question slowly answering itself, sniffing corners, pressing his nose to furniture, watching the family with a gaze that was curious rather than fearful. Bailey shadowed him with quiet patience, never pushy, always near, grooming the matted fur behind his ears with the same careful tongue she used on her puppies. One morning, as the puppies tumbled across a blanket in the living room, a chaos of paws and milk-drunk joy, Aspen crouched low at the edge of the pile. He wanted in. You could see it in the way his body leaned forward, in the small twitch of his tail. But something held him back. The distance between wildness and warmth is not measured in feet. Then Maple, the boldest pup, all courage and clumsiness, bounded up and nosed at him. Aspen flinched, ears flattened. For a breath, the room held still. Bailey stepped between them, not to separate, to translate. She licked Aspen's ear, then nudged him forward with the gentlest pressure of her muzzle. An invitation, a permission. "You belong here. Go." And he did. From that moment, Aspen was no longer the stranger at the edge. He chased tails. He batted at toys. He slept in the pile of warm fur, tucked between siblings who shared nothing with him but love. Bailey groomed him, corrected him, guarded him. Her instincts did not ask whether he was hers. They simply knew. He curled up beside the fireplace. He rested his head on a child's foot. He followed the family from room to room, quiet and watchful, as if memorizing the shape of a life he had almost never known. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, folded, official, stamped by the Department of Wildlife Conservation. Someone had reported them. An anonymous complaint. A bobcat kept illegally inside a family home. The message was plain. Under state law, possession of a wild animal was strictly prohibited. No exceptions. The family had 7 days to surrender Aspen to a certified wildlife rehabilitation center. The room went still. The puppies whimpered, sensing the shift in the air. Bailey sat beside Aspen, ears alert, eyes unblinking. And Aspen just looked up, calm and trusting, waiting for the next ordinary moment in his world of safety. He didn't know. He couldn't know. He purred in his sleep. He blinked slowly when they whispered his name. He had a heartbeat that matched theirs. How do you explain to a creature that the place it calls home is not allowed to keep it? The 7th day came with rain. They held him close that morning. He didn't struggle. He rested his head against the youngest girl's chest, breathing in her scent as though trying to press it into memory. Then the transport team arrived, gentle, professional, final. A padded crate, a soft click of a door, and then silence, the kind that fills a house like floodwater. At the rehabilitation center, 50 kilometers away, Aspen stepped out of his crate, circled the concrete enclosure once, and lay down facing the far corner. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He didn't explore. He simply waited, the way you wait for someone who promised they'd come back. At home, Bailey searched the house room by room. She found the blanket Aspen used to sleep on, sniffed it carefully, then lay down beside it and refused to move. She stopped eating. The puppies careened through the hallways, barking at absences they couldn't name. The house was still full of noise, but something essential had been pulled from its center, like a note removed from a cord. The children asked when Aspen was coming home. The parents had no answer that didn't break something. At the center, the staff noted stable vitals, but a troubling stillness. Aspen wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was grieving, and grief in a wild animal looks exactly like it does in us. A body present, a spirit somewhere else entirely. The family did not fight the law. They made a request. A calm, respectful plea. Let him come home. Let him grow in the only place he had ever lived. Place him under supervision, schedule regular check-ins, file every report required. And when instinct stirred, when the wild in him finally woke, they would open the door and let him choose. They wrote letters. They shared photographs. They posted a video, 23 seconds of Aspen asleep, one paw draped over Bailey's muzzle. And within a day it had traveled further than any of them could have imagined. Thousands responded. Teachers, parents, veterans, zookeepers. They didn't see a wild animal. They saw a son, a brother, a small, spotted miracle. A wildlife biologist from a regional university reviewed the footage and wrote a formal assessment. His conclusion was measured but unambiguous. Aspen had imprinted on Bailey and her litter. He identified them as his family. Forcing him into a standard reintroduction protocol risked irreversible psychological harm. The petition gathered 10,000 signatures, then 20, then 30. 2 weeks later, the phone rang. The Department of Wildlife Conservation, softer now, had reached a decision. An exception would be granted. Aspen could come home, under official observation, as part of a supervised study in wildlife adaptation. Regular check-ins, detailed reports, a controlled environment. But the detail that mattered most was simple. He would be with his family. The day Aspen returned was quiet. No cameras, no ceremony, just the crunch of tires on gravel and the creak of the front door swinging open. Bailey was the first to rise. She trotted forward with her ears high and her tail stiff with anticipation, every muscle tuned to the scent she had been searching for. Aspen stepped inside with cautious feet, and then he saw her. The hesitation vanished. He moved faster, head low, body loose, and pressed himself into her side. Bailey licked his face once, then again, then lay down so he could curl against her. The puppies rushed in next, a joyful avalanche of wagging and barking, and Aspen wove between them, greeting each one as if no time had passed at all. The family stood back and let the tears come. Aspen was home, not as a guest, not as a secret, not as a wild creature on borrowed time. He was home with a name, a status, and a future. He grew alongside his siblings, lanky, bright-eyed adolescents who ran louder and wilder with every passing week. Aspen kept pace with all of it, chasing butterflies, wrestling in the grass, darting after scents only he could truly understand. They were a family not of blood but of bond, a tangle of pause and breath and shared mornings. But as the seasons turned, so did something deep inside him. There were evenings when Aspen would sit at the edge of the yard, perfectly still, his ears twitching towards sounds the others couldn't hear. Sometimes he slipped into the trees and was gone for hours, returning at dusk with pine needles in his fur and a quietness that hadn't been there before. The ancient thing in him was stirring, not loudly, not urgently, but unmistakably. The family understood. They had never tried to cage him. From the very beginning, they had made one promise. When the time came, Aspen would have a choice: to stay or to go. And when that day arrives, they will open the door without a word. Because the kind of love that saves a life does not hold on. It releases. Aspen may one day walk back into the forest that first nearly took him, but he will never be lost again. He will carry everything he was given: warmth, safety, belonging, woven into the wild fabric of who he is. Because once, in the heart of winter, a mother dog walked into the woods and brought home a wild cub and loved him as her own.